Hi, I'm Christina Goetzman.
Hello, Ray Ortiz.
We have I guess, a very short window here just to kind of brief you guys on parcel investigations. Typically, a lot of you realtors, you come up on properties where you have open or expired permits and you want to know what to do in order to close those permits. The county has a process in which you would visit the department. We would take a quick look at the parcel to determine what was on the property that could be closed immediately. Say anything had permits on there where all final inspections had already been received, and in which case we'd be able to close it because it hadn't been closed in the past. Or you would have permits which had already been replaced years later with an identical, such as like re-roofing. Sometimes you'll have a re-roof permit from, say, 1980, which, 10 or 20 years later had been replaced. And if we can match the identical square footage, make sure that everything was replaced, we can simply close the previous permit based on the issuance of the latter permit. If something can't be immediately closed, we suggest that you perform a parcel investigation. You should have been provided with a parcel investigation request form. In order to receive an investigation, you would simply complete the form and submit it to your closest building department office location, along with an initial fee of $50. That fee covers the first hour of an investigation. The fee cost is $50 per hour. Most investigations do not exceed 1 hour's time, although it has occurred. At that time, once the investigation is done, we contact the requester and let them know what our findings are and what needs to be done to close each individual permit. And that's pretty much it. If there, I was going to open up for any questions or anything. I don't know if there were any index cards that were provided for questions.
The index table forms are there at the table. Right.
Okay. I really don't have anything more to add to the presentation. So it's a pretty simple process.
I'm here representing the Planning and Biological Division. Big picture items. We're going through a recent code revision. As a matter of fact, today's the first meeting with the Planning Commission, looking at those revisions. It's an extensive revision of the entire second section of code, generally chapters 130, but it's really part 2 of the building code. So we're looking at some of the issues that you guys have to deal with, like setbacks and uses and things like that. So that process is ongoing. As a matter of fact, right now the Planning Commission is having a meeting about that particular item. It's a special meeting. It's it's the first of 3. Other than that, the Planning Division we're in pretty good shape. The comprehensive plan has been worked up, and we're just humming along. So again, I could talk for hours about planning, but I need to know specific questions so I can help you out with that. So.
Since we do have a few extra moments, if anyone does have any pertinent questions, we'd be glad to entertain them at this time. Great.
Are the setbacks in the county 5 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet, like they are in the US?
That's a great question. I need to know the zoning category for the parcel, but generally it's cumulative. Right, the way it's written right now is cumulative of 10 feet. So one side has to be 5, the other side 10. But it just depends on what's on the parcel now and its zoning category. Other categories is 5 and 5, or it just depends. But yes, ma'am, it would be somewhat consistent with what you're dealing with now for the side yard setbacks. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any plan in place to require contractors to close the permits? In the past they could open permits, but then no one monitored the closing of the permits?
Generally, a contractor is responsible for closing his own permits.
And if he doesn't?
It then becomes a civil matter. But generally, a contractor, if he pulls a permit, he is responsible for closing his own permit. So that would be handled between, I guess, the owner and the contractor at that point. Yes, ma'am.
Just to follow up on that, if the contractor is gone, he's off to the next thing and he doesn't return your calls, which can happen, can the homeowner go and just close the permit themselves?
The 3 individuals that can request to reopen a permit, anybody can request the investigation, of course, because it follows Public Records Act standards. But in order to close the permit, reopen for closure, the individual who can sign the application to reopen can either be the homeowner, the contractor qualifier of record, or the listing agent with a copy of the executed listing agreement. okay? So it doesn't have to be the contractor in that case. A lot of times they're so old that the contractor may not even be around anymore. Did you have a question? No? Okay. Anybody else have a question? Yes, sir.
Property has a canal, does not have a seawall, and you want to build a seawall, who are the organizations that you have to deal with? Municipality or ground or whatever?
As with most truths, please get a permit, okay? Once the permit application is submitted, most likely it would probably be the Army Corps of Engineers, but absolutely the disciplines within the building department would also look at that. And if, for clarification, maybe if you like, you can send an email, or I'll give you my information or whatever. We can, if you have a specific parcel in mind, and we can look at the specifics about that parcel, because your question depends a lot on what's there, what's nearby. There are overwhelming issues. So I want to just make sure that, but in general, it's how I had stated it. But for something more definitive, please send us the information. We'll be more happy to answer your questions specifically.
Yes, sir?
If you have a house with a cottage in the back that's a single family situation, and you want to turn the cottage into a rental unit, what is the process you go through?
That is a great question, because it's very layered, and it depends, okay? That's with everything.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, I'm sorry. The question is, if I have a cottage in the back of my house as an accessory to the principal structure, can I convert it into a single family? Oh, I'm sorry, convert it into a rental unit. Okay. I don't know. I need to know what the zoning is, okay? Because in the county, there are very specific zoning categories that first off, you have to have the density, okay? So if you didn't have that, if that cottage is an accessory to the principal structure, then it's accessory. So for you to separate it out, you may not have the density, allowed for that specific zoning category, okay? But let's just say that it is. Well, the zoning category has to then allow for vacation rentals to be on that parcel. So I have to know what the zoning is. For example, IS and URM zoning districts strictly prohibit it within, mostly, unless it's a gated community. There are some other ways to approve a vacation rental in IS and URM, but most categories, most zoning categories allow for it. So it would depend.
I wasn't necessarily talking about a vacation rental.
Uh-huh.
I was talking about with our affordable housing problem here, it would be somebody who would rent it to live there year round.
Okay, so it was indeed the creation of a second dwelling unit.
Right.
Okay, well, that actually makes it a lot simpler, okay? The bottom line is you have to have the density on the parcel to allow for it. So if it's zone IS, the answer is no, because, well, I'll back up. The allowed density in an IS zoning district is 1 per platted parcel. If both structures are on a singular platted parcel, you do not have enough density to separate it out. However, it's on 2 parcels or more parcels or whatever. It depends on what the allowed density is for the square footage. In IS, which is most likely the case, it's 1 per platted parcel. So if that's the specifics, the answer would be no. You would not have the density, unless it was vested. There are other things that we could, but that's another subject. Okay. I heard someone in the front first, and then this person in the back.
When they answer your question, state the question.
Okay.
As to open permits, does the work have to meet the present requirements or the requirements at the time the permit is pulled?
That's a very good question. The question was whether or not past permits, when being closed today, would have to meet today's requirements or the requirements of the past. That is something that is discretionary by the building official. Most cases, you would have to meet the requirements of today. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am?
Is there a statute of limitations as far as a building that may not have a building permit at all? To allow that building to remain?
The question was whether or not there was a statute of limitations on whether or not a building would remain if it had no permit at all. That is not an answer that I can give to you at this moment. I'd be happy to look into that further. I'll provide you with my information before I leave so that you can send me an email asking that specific question, and I will research it for you. And ma'am, over here you had a question?
Yeah, as of October, I know that the application for new homes to the building department has changed their fee structure.
Yes,
Can
ma'am.
you address that to us as far as a percentage of value or how we can advise a client on what the costs are to pull a building permit?
Her question was to explain further the fee schedule that's become effective as of 10/1 for the building department. There's a calculation that's done, and if you wanted to email me, I can give you the exact information on that. But it's based upon the value of work for the construction project. And as far as percentages goes for each discipline, you have the building fee, which takes each discipline, and you have your standard processing, which is 25%, and each other discipline is worth 15% of the fee. So if you wanted to email me that, I could probably look into that further for you. Yes, ma'am.
What is the difference between tier 1 lot and a tier 3 lot? Because I read in the paper that they have some tier 1 lots that they are going to convert to tier 3. So what is the...
Okay. The question is, what's the difference between a tier 1 and a tier 3 lot? Okay. There's a nice thick section of code that will completely answer all of that. Okay? In general, the tiering of a parcel is just a component of the ROGO of the rate of growth ordinance, which is ROGO, and everyone in this room probably knows what that is. Okay, in general, it's about the type of habitat that's allowed that's on the parcel. So let's just to make things simple, an existing car lot would be a tier 3. There's no vegetation on it. Okay, an offshore island is a tier 1. So people with more experience than me, and specifically with that discipline, went to all these parcels and checked them out, looked at them, and made an assessment as to what designation that should be. So it's generally a difference in habitat. Did I answer your question, ma'am?
Yes, so like I said, I read in the paper that they are going to convert some tier 1s to tier 3.
Okay.
So that means the habitat is not there anymore, or?
I'd have to see specifically what the case is, but most likely, a person maybe something's changed on the parcel and they've asked for it to be reassessed, and the Planning and Environmental Resources Division is looking into that assessment and seeing if it does indeed fall within their parameters. It's again, this is my background is more towards planning and architecture. But for specific environmental resources questions as to what triggers specifically what makes a parcel tier 1 or tier 3, that's for someone in a deeper background regarding the species. But in general, it's about the habitat. Okay, so the person felt that the habitat type changed, and so they asked for it to be changed possibly. I don't know. I'd have to see what the paper said, see what lot is it specifically about. Look at the application and see what. That's the short answer. Okay, ma'am? Thank you. 2 minutes left.
Are there any further questions? Yes, ma'am.
In the state new comprehensive plan, have they passed all the new regulations regarding lowering the amount of permits for the county from 248 per year to 48? Is that going to be
Okay.
passed?
All right, so the question is, if the allocations for ROGO per year has changed from the 248 to 48, right? Okay. I don't think that has happened as of yet. I'd have to double check with my, with my director and confirm that what's the time schedule for that to occur. But at this time, we're still at the allocation system we have now.
Well, the proposal was to reduce the amount of permits by the end of 2017. So the comprehensive plan was going through different agencies for their approval. I was just asking whether or not that had been ratified by all those agencies.
Okay.
You know?
To recap the question was if all the agencies involved have ratified the reduction of the current allocation system for ROGO from 248 to 48. I don't know. I'm not completely in the loop regards to some of those things. That is something that the comprehensive the person responsible for the comprehensive plan is responsible for, and it would be irresponsible of me to give you stale information, and I'd rather not do that. So you want to know what's happening at this very moment in time, and it may not be as current as you would like it for it to be, because then, so I'd rather not give you, just to state you, I don't know what the exact moment, what's going on with that part.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap up our presentation. We're going to leave our contact information at the head table over there, so if anybody needs to reach myself or Ray Ortiz, we'll be happy to answer any questions further by email or by phone, okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great presentation.